Well, welcome back to World History and Literature. This is week 1 of a 36-week course, and I'm looking forward to diving into traditional and modern history. That's our topic for today. So with that, let's get into it. We're looking at 4 basic ideas today: driving principle, cycle of choices, where we're going to begin in history and why, and then diving into the particulars of what separates traditional from modern history. So we're going to start once again. You had a homework assignment that dealt with the driving principle, that overall focus, our premise of how we're going to look at history. Machiavelli was the author of this particular quote. He says, "Whoever wishes to foresee the future must consult the past, for human events ever resemble those of preceding times. This arises from the fact that they are produced by men who ever have been and ever shall be animated by the same passions, and thus they necessarily have the same results." You were supposed to write a paragraph, either by hand or in the Google Classroom, that answered or responded to the question, is Machiavelli's assessment of the human nature accurate? Why and why not? Why do you think he is right, or why do you think he is wrong? So hopefully you have finished that. It's all turned in, and I'm looking forward to reading your responses. But let's take a look at this a little bit more specifically. He defines our goal, our purpose, and then why. So our goal, he says, is whoever wishes to foresee the future. As history students, we tend to think we're looking to the past to understand the past. But in reality, we look at the past, try to understand the past, try to understand why people made the decisions that they did in order to understand the now, what's happening in our own world, in politics, in the family, in society. What is going on now? Can we use some principle, some method of looking at the past to determine what's happening now and, as he says, to foresee in the future? Where are we going? If we make these certain decisions, where is society, where is our government, where is our nation, where is the globe going to go? So that's the first thing. That's our goal. Second thing is, what's the path that we get there? He says you must consult the past. You got to look at the past. If we see the past, we see how people fell into certain situations, weighed what kind of problems and challenges there might be to achieving certain positive benefits, what benefits and opportunities might be there that they would kind of yearn for and want and desire, weigh those two and come up with, well, what kind of choices can I make? And then move on from there. So that's our path. He also says, for human events ever resemble those of preceding times. Why is this true? Why is it that Machiavelli looks at the past and goes, you know, history repeats itself? And it repeats itself because human events are just repeats of themselves. But why are they repeats? Why do humans repeat their own actions again and again? And he explains why. He says this arises from the fact that they are produced, these decisions, these events, by men who ever have been, all the way till time past, and ever shall be, meaning all the way into the future. They're animated by the same passions, the same needs, the same desires, whether it be greed or lust for power, or trying to survive, trying to get ahead, trying to get something for the family, trying to provide needs. Those same passions are true throughout any language barrier, any people group. It carries over any civilization, any size of civilization, whether it be a little itty-bitty village all the way to a huge, gigantic city. Those same passions motivate and push and influence the decision of what to do in every situation and what decisions to make. That's why Machiavelli and why this principle is so important. And if you look at the cycle of choices, you see how this plays out. You have this situation. We come into a situation. The nation comes into a situation. We look at some of the challenges that are presented. some of the difficulties, some of the things we would like to avoid. We see certain opportunities and benefits that might come out of that. But that might require certain sacrifices, certain actions, and we may not like all of them, but hey, we got to weigh all of the good with the bad and figure out what we want. And then we're going to base some choices on those probabilities, on that weighing of problems and opportunities. And then we're going to make a decision. And after that new decision, that action, that event then creates new situations, either for the people that made the decision or for those people that might be influenced by them. Take, for instance, think of it your own self. You woke up this morning and you had breakfast or didn't have breakfast. Did you have breakfast? What did you have? Was there, you woke up, the situation is, I'm hungry, I want to eat, or maybe I woke up, I don't want to eat. There are certain problems with that. I may not have energy to get through school, but the opportunity is, well, we got Lucky Charms in the refrigerator or in the cupboard. And I could do that, but that's high in sugar, that has problems. You weighed it back and forth. You could do eggs, maybe a nice omelet, but that takes time. You don't have time. All these factors kind of fit into your decision this morning, whether or not to have breakfast. And if you did decide to have breakfast, what kind of breakfast you decided to have. That's the scenario. And then you had choices, and you picked the choices. Well, Lucky Charms is quick, but high in sugar, but it tastes really cool. Or I could do eggs. It takes longer, and I have to make an omelet. But it's better for me. It's healthier for me. I think I'm going to choose the omelet and take the extra time. There you go. That presents a new situation. Maybe you're late for school a little bit. Maybe you're running behind. Maybe you have to sacrifice some other chore that you had to get done or duty, task that you had to get done in the morning in order to take the time to make your breakfast, rather than having something quick where you dump a bunch of cereal and sugar and milk and you're done. So that's what we're looking at as far as Machiavelli's idea. That's our key focus, our driving principle. So with that in mind, where do we start our study of modern history? If we say modern history, what comes to your mind? Is it just computers and the internet? Or can you expand that, get a bigger picture, and kind of go back a little ways? At what point in time did tradition, the day-to-day, the week-to-week, year-to-year, century-to-century life and living, when did it have a significant shift? When did it change? When did it become more modern? And how did it become modern? When we say modern, what do we really mean by that? So I want to propose to you that about 1760s, 1750 to about 1770, right around that general area, there is this dividing line between what is considered traditional history and what is considered modern history. And how are we going to recognize that divide? How do we recognize traditional sort of life and history and living compared to modern history and modern living? Well, I want to propose a couple things. There's a couple ways that we can do this, and all of this is in your packet that you received in class. The first one is dealing with world population and that change in population. If you look at this, on the left-hand side, you have the year, AD 0, AD 1000, AD 1250, etc., all the way into 1900. And then on the right side, you have what was the population, global population of the world, or at least estimated what was the global population at that time. So at 0 AD, you had about 300 million people on the earth. And then you move your way down. So what I would like you to do is just pause the video for a moment, look at your packet. This particular graph is there, chart is there. What I would like you to do is do this next part, and that's this one. I want you to calculate the change in years. So from 0, AD 0 to AD 1000, that's a change of 1,000 years, right? Okay, so you'd write in 1,000 years underneath change in years on that 1,000 line. And then the next one is 1250, or AD 1250, so that would be 250 more years, so that's the next one. 250 years is the next one to 1500, et cetera, et cetera. I want you to fill all that out, as well as calculate the change in population. So from 0 to 1,000, how much bigger did the globe grow? How did the population, how did the people groups grow? And so calculate this. So pause the video right now, fill out the information. And I know what you're thinking. You're going, Mr. Wilson, this is a history class and an English class, not a math class. Guess what? We blend everything here. So you're going to have to do it. So get out your calculators, figure it out, and come up with the answer. So pause right here, and we'll answer. We'll come back in a minute, and I'll give you the answers. All right, so I hope that you took time, that you paused the video, and that you did the work. I will collect those. So here are your answers. Here's what's going on. So looking at population, how does population tell us that there has been a significant change in living in the world, in quality of life, et cetera? So if you look at the first line, and we're looking at change in years, how many years is between the lines, and then how much growth have we seen in population? So that first one, we had 1,000 years of growth from 0 to 81,000, and only about 10 million people increased on the globe. Then from 1,000 to 1250, you had an increase. That's an increase of only 250 years. That's a quarter of the time that we had before, and yet we now have 90 million in growth. The following is another 250. In years, 100 million, it's about the same. Next one, now we're into the 1750s. So from 1500 to 1750, that's all, again, 250 years. But look at how much it has increased. It's almost tripled. 290 million people of an increase. And then by 1800, only 15 or 50 years later, you have another 210 million. So can you see that 750, 80, 1800, that there is something drastically different in the way people are living and reproducing and staying alive? We don't have the death rate that we used to have. We don't have the child death rate that we have anymore. For some reason, people are staying healthier, longer, living longer, having more babies, and they are sustaining that new population. Remember, you got to feed these people. So there's a lot of factors, but population is one way that we can look at the world and say, yep, something is going on right around the 1700s, and it just rapidly increases into the 1900s, that signals something has changed. So let's keep going. What other possible ways? Another possible way is called the Malthusian trap. This was developed many years ago by a doctor named Dr. Malthus. Anyway, he wanted to determine real income. And when I say real, I mean think of like realized, real like in my pockets. What is sustainable and usable? It's not like real income like my paycheck. If I get, or if you're working at McDonald's making $20 an hour, you're not paid $20 an hour. That's not what you take home. That's not what you realize when you put it into your bank. You have taxes that got to come out. You got bills you got to take out. Things like that. There's things that are pulled from that. So real income incorporates a whole bunch of factors, whether it be the quality of life, the amount of income that you have, how much food are you producing, are you sustaining yourself with the food that you're producing, are you in a surplus or are you in a deficiency, where are you? Are you in debt all the time? Are you living in good situations? That's all sort of encompassed in this real income. And if you look at the graph, starting at about the year 1000 BC, it works its way all the way until you see right around the 1500s. It's sort of like going like this. It's just a little itty bitty, very little variance. It's kind of flat. And the reason for that is because as people grew, the amount of food to sustain them started to go down because we didn't have rapid food production at the time. So people started to get sick, they started dying off. So you have population started to go up, crops started to go down, you couldn't feed that population, they started to get sick, and then you ended up with them coming back down, and the food availability starts to go back up because there's fewer people. And so it just did this sort of ripple for thousands of years. So what we see is there is the spark of the Industrial Revolution in the 1700s, 1750s or so, and all of a sudden, look at that graph, whoosh, right through the roof. There is more food, more medicine, more sustainable living, more surplus, more income, more jobs, and people are starting to live better. That quality of life, that having that real money in your pockets is starting to expand. And that trap, that Malthusian trap that just kept going for 1,000 years is actually broken at that point, and you see real income, real prosperity going through the roof at that time. That's the Malthusian trap and the graph that goes with it. But that's not the only one. You got to kind of consider also global influence. Europe is now this massive monster of imperialism. It's starting to reach out, shipping and trade and mercantilism and all this sort of stuff is going on, colonialism. And if you look at your map, this is 18th century. And everybody kind of thinks, okay, well, what's going on? Well, I remember back in 8th grade that England kind of came across and settled the 13 colonies. Okay, well, that's sort of like part of it. But look at what has happened. England, that little itty bitty dot up there in Europe, those couple little islands, have pretty much taken over Australia, India, parts of Africa. They've taken over Canada and the 13 colonies. They're expansive, and they're sending trade and money and commercialism back and forth, not to mention military strength, back and forth through all those different regions. That's not the only one. There's also the Spanish. Spain is also doing the same thing, controlling almost the entire west coast of North and South Americas. China has its own huge empire. Germany is kind of playing with them a little bit. Russia has its own empire. This is taking over, and the world is getting smaller and smaller. It's not just I know my neighbor in my little village, and that's about as much as far as I've gone. It's I can get on a boat from England, travel across the Atlantic Ocean, and I can visit the colonies, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a big change. That's a huge difference. Another one was political revolutions. In the 1700s, we have two that pop up. One is the American Revolution that we all know about, and the other one, sort of based off of or inspired by the American Revolution, is the French Revolution. There are many others that take place. The Haitian Revolution. There's going to be shortly thereafter, in the early 1800s, there's going to be more in South America and Central America. Those are all going to start popping up like crazy because people's thinking politically and what government is supposed to do is changing. The philosophy is changing. It's not so much we just bow to a king and that's it. We bow to the emperor and he's, the manifestation of God on earth kind of thing. That mentality is going away. And that's also an indicator that history, life, how we see life and perceive life is changing and becoming more modern. Next one, you have culture and religion. This is a big one. So traditionally speaking, over these thousands or the first 1700 years, 1600 years AD, the church has pretty much established the right and wrong, the way we live, what is good, what is bad, and how we should think. They are politically empowered as well, not just spiritually in control of man's soul, so to speak. But during the 1700s, we have the scientific revolution. We have this age of reasoning. There is this blossoming of scientific investigation from some incredibly wonderful, brilliant people. that sort of challenge the tradition, the way that whatever the church says is the way you think, that's the way it is, to more of, hey, let's check this out. Let's find some real empirical evidence, things like that. But even then, even at that point, and this will play a really big role moving into the 1800s, there is a division within the science or philosophy way of thinking. There are those who believe that God and the traditional biblical story, worldview, should be set aside. It's unnecessary. It's fantasy. It's pretend. Man is completely capable within his own mind to reason out his own being and to observe the world and make conclusions based on what he can observe and experiment with. And you don't need God. You don't need a backdrop or perception or worldview that is of the traditional biblical worldview. There are those like Kant and Voltaire, both of them really wanted to set the church aside, religion aside, and kind of discover things on their own. The other folks like Isaac Newton, Sir Francis Bacon, these folks clung to God and the faith, but set themselves apart from traditional science in that they figured that God gave man reason, therefore they should be able to use what God has given them within the scope and worldview of the biblical worldview to determine what is true and what is not, to kind of interpret what they observe. The idea was God is a God of order. He created everything in an orderly manner. They all work together. Therefore, as a scientist, I should be able to go out into the world and observe and mathematically and objectively find that order. I should see it. So the idea of God in the biblical worldview sort of helped define their science. So this split in science and philosophy is another big change. And again, when these things take place, world population explodes, when you have changes in culture and religion and where they are placed in society, you're coming up with new situations. The world, the population is coming into a new sort of how do we live? What is true? What is good and moral? What is evil? What laws, what governments should be in place, and what is their function? How should they operate? Things like that. And they're looking at some of the problems that they are facing, some of the opportunities that maybe a change would produce, and they're weighing those things. What if we get rid of the king? If we get rid of the king and we try something like, I don't know, how about people govern themselves, like in America, in the American Revolution? We're going to throw off King George and we're going to be our own people. We're going to have a constitutional republic and kind of govern ourselves. Wow, that's kind of new. It's never happened before in all of history. Will that work? Well, maybe. Are there problems? Yeah. Are there opportunities? Would there be benefits? Yes. So what should we do? How do we go about making that happen? So those are the choices. And as a result, we had the American Revolution. We had the Constitution put into place, new government put into place. We are our new nation. Pa-pam, new situation. How do we operate as a new nation without the king's backing? So those are some of the things that we are going to talk about today, or we talk about today in part one of tradition and modern history. What I would like to do is I'm going to break here, let you have a chance to go out and do what you got to do, and then we'll come back and do part two, and then we'll see you in a little bit. So, see you soon. Bye.